Coming up, interviews with changemakers, from a Dene elder to a Buffalo rancher and a Dakota cultural bearer. Plus, we hear a very personal boarding school story. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amarawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. Around Turtle Island, organizers are gearing up for Monday's Indigenous Peoples Day. In the U.S., the second Monday of October has historically been celebrated as Columbus Day. That holiday has now been reimagined to celebrate the vibrant and diverse Indigenous people of this land. The idea has picked up momentum as several major cities and states have officially chosen to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. There are a mix of events this year that are happening in person and virtually. Those events span from New Hampshire and New York City to Alaska and Oregon. Many will also be watching Netflix as it releases a new animated series called Spirit Rangers on Monday. You can find a full list of events by visiting ictnews.org and searching for the headline More Joy This October, an Indigenous Peoples Day event list. Many people in South Dakota are headed to the Black Hills Powwow this weekend. In the meantime, many Native organizations have been meeting to talk business. ICT's Shirley Snavy was there this week and has this report.
This is a result of many hours of conversation within our organization about the need to bring people together to have some really difficult conversations, and really specifically non-Indigenous media allies.
Thunder Valley Community Corporation has sponsored the first ever Lakota Media Summit here in Rapid City, South Dakota. 150 people were at the conference, including mainstream journalists and Native people from the region. The ultimate goal of the gathering is to change the narrative of Lakota in the media.
Our own community needs to have these same kind of conversations so that we're not perpetuating and repeating these harmful narratives amongst ourselves. And so then we open it up to our own community, and then of course our youth. We want our youth to be a part of this because they are the change makers.
Angelina Swallow is in journalism class at Little Wound School on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
As a young Lakota woman, it really gets your voice out there, and like not just on the res, but like other communities, reservations, and worldwide.
I like to tell people that whether you paint, whether you draw, that's a form of a story. So I didn't expect to go into journalism, but when I joined the Navy, they taught us to learn everything. So I wanted to be a photographer at first, but now I basically do it all.
Conference organizers hope to make this an annual event. In Rapid City, South Dakota, Shirley Snavy, ICT News.
One of the biggest Indigenous art markets in the country is setting its sights on a new weekend location. The Southwestern Association for Indian Arts is announcing the debut of the Santa Fe Indian Market at Albuquerque. This two-day event runs from October 1st to the 2nd in downtown Albuquerque, New Mexico. The market will offer 100 booths featuring some of SWAIA's 2022 juried artists. After the success of this year's 100th anniversary market in Santa Fe, the organization decided to do more events. Northern Cheyenne citizen and operations manager for SWAIA, Jamie Scholes, spoke to ICT about why art markets are so important.
when you're thinking of Native arts or Indigenous arts, there's a full living community behind that piece, but not only tradition, but innovation and resilience. And so you're taking home and supporting a living community through that artist. So if you have the opportunity to even just visit with those artists, you'll see that, and that's transportive.
For more information, visit swaya.org. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. In January 2022, Navajo leader Peterson Zaw received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grand Canyon Trust. From 1982 to 1987, Zaw served as the chairman of the Navajo Nation. He then became its first president in 1990. At age 84, his long career spans many sectors, including being the special advisor to the president on American Indian Affairs at Arizona State University. Chairman Zaw reflects on his work from his home in Window Rock, Arizona.
One of them is probably the development of the Permanent Fund for the Navajo Nation. As you know, the Navajo Nation lived off mineral lease income. They make mineral leases with companies such as coal and all of the other minerals that we have here on the res, including the one that I think that did a devastating job in a negative way, which is the uranium. And so they lived off the annual income of those companies making the lease payment that they have with the Navajo Nation. So when I became the tribal chair, I've heard a lot of complaints about some of those companies, and it will take you to a position that you need to establish, which is that maybe that's not a way to build a nation, because what we're trying to do on a Navajo is really build a nation that we like to work with. And so we decided as a group that what we should do is establish a permanent fund. That way we don't have to rely on income from mineral leases from companies, and we'll have our own money that we can generate through interest earned each year, and then leave the principal in safe places with the banks and trust companies. And that way we have a steady income that comes in each year to do the project that we need to do.
The education of Navajo youth is important to President Zaw.
It's one of those things that I think they need to learn how to do, is to really create their own things that they have passion for, and just provide them with resources such as education and encouragement from families, their grandparents, and help them. Because even if you go on to college and get your degree or master's degree, you still don't really know what the local community wants done back in your community. So you need the advice, a sense of direction and an encouragement from the elderly people, because they live there all their life and they know what's needed. And all they need to do is work with the youth that's trained in the white man's ways to accomplish certain things. But when it comes to the local community and the Navajo people, they have to rely on that.
Zaw reflected on the Grand Canyon Trust Award.
Well, one has to feel good when they are helping somebody. You have to have a passion for that. You can't say to yourself, well, They gave me all this problem. Here's the way I'm going to solve it my way. You can't do that. You have to work with them. You have to also encourage them. The concept that they're able and capable and have the resources to resolve some of those issues. And so you put it back on them and say, okay, why don't we look at it? We, not me.
Native Americans make up just a fraction of Rapid City's population, but more than half of the jail population. A circle of elders is playing a direct role in trying to change that. Stuart Huntington has more.
Chris White Eagle's youth program uses Lakota culture to put and keep kids on a healthy path. He's helping to bring that same philosophy to the criminal justice system as part of the new Oyate Court that takes cases off the state docket and puts them into the hands of a circle of Lakota elders. The goal is to heal those who get arrested instead of punishing them.
When they get in trouble and stuff, just locking them up and just thinking that's going to fix the problem, it ain't. You know, I think with the Oyate Court, we look more deeper into trying to heal them. You know, we get to ask the questions the courts don't ask, you know, get to the root of the problem.
Which seems to be getting results. The Oyate, or People's Court, launched late last year as a new diversion program out of the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office, is already expanding.
We went from going every other week to every week. So, yeah, I mean, there's growth.
Which means more help for people like Robert Jones, who got into a fight and was facing serious felony charges. He was scared.
You know, when you're just in the Western courts, you don't feel like there's anybody there with you. You know what I mean? You feel like you're alone, and that's what people get so scared of is, you know, that the feeling alone, that feeling of something bad's gonna happen.
But he says he was even more apprehensive when his case got switched to the new Oyate Court.
When it comes to the elders being in the circle, it's nerve-wracking because they're really talking to you, you know, saying things to you that make you like sit there and think like, dang, like I really need to do better. I really need to get my life together. You know what I mean? They give you that extra push. They give you that motivation because they are your elders. And sometimes that extra push is what you need. And I guess that's what made me like really nervous because I didn't know if I had it in me to be able to sit there and take the extra push.
He did. He's now employed, not getting into fights, and happily raising his infant son. It's the kind of result prosecutors seek. It's the kind of results the Oyate Court, using a traditional indigenous peacemaking approach many people believe can deliver.
The elders hear that case, they ask questions of the participant, and they get to the real heart of the matter, and then they come up with a plan to address whatever the real issue is. And it's remarkable to see. It's been remarkable to see. And that's really, I think, how we move forward with criminal justice in the 21st century. We're not going to solve problems by incarcerating people. We know that.
In Rapid City, Stuart Huntington, ICT Newscast.
Mycoplasma bovis. It's common in cattle, but rarely deadly. For buffalo, it's taking a toll. In March 2022, the New York Times reported on Fred Dubray's bison herd and this disease that has no cure. Fred has been ranching on the Cheyenne River Reservation in South Dakota for 30 years. Take a look at this interview from April.
Unfortunately, since 2013, when they called attention to it, they haven't done anything. Which was kind of shocking to me because I thought for sure they probably did a lot of research, and so I started inquiring around, and nobody really knows anything about it. And so I'm not sure why they dropped the ball at that point, but it just seems like nothing has been done. And so talking to all the veterinarian scientists that I can, there's just very little known about it, and it really needs a lot of research done. So.
Walk us through how you noticed that something was wrong with your bison herd. What happened?
Well, I noticed that I was having some buffalo that were crippled, and they, I'd never seen that before because, they'll fight around a little bit, and some of them will get a little bit banged up a little now and then, but they come out of it right away. But we noticed that there would be some that just seemed to be getting worse and worse and getting more crippled, and so I kind of started paying attention to it, and then I noticed that a couple died from it. And so I took one into a local veterinarian, and he took some samples and sent it in and said, this is what it is Mycoplasma bovis. And I didn't really understand anything about it, didn't know a lot about it. And I'd heard that it was, I'd heard about it, but I didn't think that I had anything to worry about because I thought it was mostly in feedlots and stuff like that. And my herd is a free roaming herd that has very little contact with us. You know, I try to keep hands off as possible. So I didn't think it would be ever anything possible to get into my herd. And then when it did, I thought, boy, this is really a big problem, because if it can get in my herd, it can get in any herd.
That's a great segue into my next question, which is how many bison you've lost because of this disease, and how does that affect you?
Well, I've lost somewhere around between 40 and 50% of my herd, probably, my breeding herd. And it affects mostly cows and breeding bulls, big bulls. And so, you know, which is the main source of your herd dynamics. And so it's really devastating. And I've heard that, you know, it can lose anywhere from 20% to 100% from other people that have had it. And right now there's about 25 herds throughout the country that are infected with it.
I'm wondering if you think that climate change has anything to do with this disease.
I definitely think it does, because, you know, from everything that I've tried to find out about it, a lot of people say that they believe it's drought related, because any time that it seems to come around, it seems to be during a drought, and, you know, during real dry part of when the country is really dry. So, you know, but nobody really knows for sure, but that just seems to be prevalent when it is the big outbreaks of it. So, and I think, you know, just looking from, you know, my standpoint and my herd, it has been really, we've been severely dry here in a severe drought. Nobody understands really where it comes from. If it comes out of the ground, can come in there, it's already in the buffalo. So those are the kind of things that really need to be studied to find out. And unfortunately, it just hasn't been done yet. So, you know, I'm hoping to bring some attention to it so that when things start to happen and people can figure out, you know, at least hopefully how to prevent it or how to deal with it at least. But right now, there's just no answers at all from anywhere.
Fred, I can hear while talking to you that these bison really mean a lot to you. Can you tell us how much they mean to you and your family, and, you know, what it means to have these bison who are sick?
You know, the bison are our livelihood, which is, you know, pretty vital part of our, you know, that's our operation, but it goes way beyond that to us because, you know, I've been involved in bison restoration back to Indian country for, you know, a lot of years. And because in our tribe and a lot of other tribes, you know, that's a set cornerstone of our culture. And especially for us, I said, that's where we get our, you know, our values from. That's our, you know, they say that we and the bison are one and the same. Whatever happens to them happens to us. And it's been that way since time immemorial. This is probably real important to this part of the country in North America. It was probably the, you know, one of the biggest, you know, millions of buffalo roamed here, and that was, you know, the leading mammal that was on this part of the world. So that then when they got devastated and all the, you know, buffalo numbers went down from, you know, millions and millions of them down to 100 at one time. That
was bison rancher Fred Dubray. St. Mary's Indian Boarding School is a place tied with history to ICT's national correspondent, Mary Annette Pember. The school once operated on the Bad River Ojibwe Reservation in Wisconsin, and it was the school her mother attended. Mary Annette shares this story.
I recently traveled to the mother house of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, the order of Catholic nuns who taught at St. Mary's Indian Boarding School on the Bad River Reservation in Wisconsin, where my mother attended school in the 30s and 1940s. Located in La Crosse, Wisconsin, the order's sprawling buildings include a convent, living space and nursing home for sisters, office spaces, archives, museum, and chapel. All are connected by a series of underground tunnels. The sisters gave me a tour of their properties and magnificent chapel. This inlay is mother of pearl.
Mother of pearl, and this is all marble. The altars are marble. Carrara marble from Italy.
And you said you have no idea of the cost?
We have no idea the total cost of the chapel, which is quite a mystery.
St. Mary's School closed in 1969, but like many Catholic orders that operated Indian boarding schools, the sisters have embarked on a campaign to examine this work and create a truth and healing process for harm they committed against Indigenous peoples. The sisters are digitizing their boarding school archives and making them available to the Bad River tribe. So tell me a little bit about, what the order is doing regarding its history at the St. Mary's Indian Boarding School in Odana on the Bad River Reservation, which I understand is the only Indian boarding school that the sisters taught at. Is that correct?
That's correct. We administered it from 1883 to 1969. And right now, I would say we're in a big learning curve of what the history is. We're re-looking at the history.
I like to say there has been a lot of conversating. And wonders how long is this got to go on? I mean, how many? It sounds so vague and open-ended, and it doesn't really sound like it's all this sort of internal stuff that's going on, framed in this fearfulness of not opening these institutions, not opening themselves up to possible, perhaps financial risk. That's really kind of what it seems to be to me, as a person looking in. So it doesn't seem to be moving very quickly, and that I think a lot of people find that really disappointing.
People who have been living their entire lives in this reality, their perspective is understandably different than people who are just saying after 2 years, wait a minute, there's a problem here? And you're right, it's been a long time in coming. Mary, this is particularly for you. This is personal, because the story of your mother and your grandmother, as you've shared it with the world, you've also shared it with me. I've prayed about your mom. I've prayed about your grandma. I've prayed about you. And I want you to know that I have heard the pain. I can't comprehend it, but I've heard it. I believe it. And as the president of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, I am sorry. I apologize for what those experiences and what our school has done in your family. I am sorry. And know that I will continue to pray, because I think that this conversation right now is part of a bigger picture that neither one of us knows, who's holding it.
We bless you in the name of the Lord.
Miigwech, thank you. The sisters' apology and blessings were unexpected, but represent an important first start towards healing. True reconciliation, however, demands action from all Catholic Indian boarding school entities. That action includes opening all church archives to survivors and their families. Surely, after all this time, Native peoples and all Americans deserve to know the truth. Marionette Pember in La Crosse, Wisconsin, for ICT.
In February 2022, we featured a book from the Minnesota Historical Society Press. Voices from Pajuta Zizi is written by Teresa Peterson and Walter Super Labatt Jr. Let's take a look at part of a film from Pioneer PBS in Granite Falls, Minnesota that features Labatt's work.
One of my early pairs of moccasins I was so proud of that I came home to show my dad. He was actually getting kind of emotional. He was on the verge of tears because he kept rubbing the beadworks like this, and he's saying, "Oh," he says, "I thought this was a lost art." And So that was really a motivation to, continue. And I ended up, I had not intended to give him that, but after that, I got to give it to him. So I gave him the moccasins. When I started to make my outfits, learning to do beadwork, I went to Tandy and I got leather and I started doing just about tore my hands apart. But I finally got my outfit done. But that year that I danced, some guy in the Powell circuit come up to me and says, "Hey, geez, I like your beadwork. Well, you did a good job of that." I says, "Yeah, but geez, you look at my fingers, what I did to my fingers." And he says, "Oh, you have to have Indian tan buckskin. That's just like cloth. You need to." And I said, "Yeah, okay, but where the hell do you get that?" I thought that was something of the past. I asked my dad. I says, "Dad, do you know how to make Indian tan buckskin?" He says, "Well, sure. I used to help my mother make buckskin." So through his explanations and help, that's how I got started.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.